Here is my lovely audience. So my name is Kerr, and I'm doing this presentation for Advanced Public Speaking at Western Washington University. And I'm telling you a story today that dates back to the 10th century, and its earliest origins were found in Italy. It is a European folktale titled Little Red Riding Hood, and it's been, of course, rewritten and retold ever since, the most famous being by the Grimm brothers. So let's get started. Once upon a time, a little girl lived in a village next to the forest, and one day her mother approached her with a basket and asked her if she would mind taking the basket to her grandmother's house that just so happened to be across the other side of the forest. Little Red Riding Hood said, "Well, of course, mother," and her mother responded saying, "Don't you dare talk to strangers." And Little Red Riding Hood replied, "Of course I won't, mother," and went along on her merry way. So as she was going through the forest, she came across the big bad wolf. And the big bad wolf approached her and said, "Where are you going, little girl?" And Little Red Riding Hood politely said, "I'm going to my grandmother's house, Mr. Wolf." And the wolf immediately ran to her grandmother's house before Little Red could get there and knocked on the door. And when grandmother opened the door, he scooped her up and hid her in the cupboard and put on her clothes and lay in her bed, waiting for Little Red. So when Little Red went to the door of her grandmother's house, she let herself in as she usually does and went to her grandmother's bedside. She said, "My, what big ears you have, grandmother." And her grandmother responded, "What better to hear you with, darling?" And then Little Red said, "My, what big eyes you have, grandmother." And the wolf responded, "What better to see you with, my dear?" And Little Red said, "My, what big teeth you have, grandmother." And the wolf said, "What better to eat you with, my dear?" And he lunged at her, and Little Red screamed. And as this was all happening, the woodcutters in the woods could hear Little Red scream and came to her rescue, and they beat the wolf up, and the wolf scurried on into the woods, never to be seen again. They rescued Grandma from the cupboard, and Little Red and her embraced, telling each other how much they love each other, and Little Red Riding Hood promised to never ever talk to strangers again. Yay.